In the Army Appropriations of 1903, President Theodore Roosevelt pushed for the establishment of the National Board for the Promotion of Rifle Practice. This act enabled civilians to train inductees in marksmanship prior to military service. Subsequent acts authorized citizens to be issued military firearms, ammunition, targets, and other gear to help them become proficient in military service rifle use. Civilians were also allowed to use military ranges for training and to develop teams to compete against military marksmen. President Theodore Roosevelt's experience in the western United States and with the U.S. Volunteer Cavalry, the Rough Riders, had shown him that the United States military had done a poor job in maintaining marksmanship skills among the troops necessary for survival. Roosevelt knew if good marksmanship skills were to be constant and of high quality, civilians were going to have to maintain those skills. For example, in 1794, the U.S. Army established its first marksmanship program, which had failed by 1797. This had been repeated hundreds of times before 1900. U.S. military marksmanship came and went depending on the general officer in charge. In Illinois, the Illinois State Rifle Association is the organization designated to maintain civilian marksmanship skills. The Illinois State Rifle Association was founded immediately after the passage of the National Guard Act of 1903. The ISRA was formed as a civilian volunteer organization in Danville, Illinois, to carry out this mission, which it still does today. Immediately upon its inception, the ISRA began to develop marksmanship skills by establishing training programs, participating in matches, and establishing military trophies that civilians could compete for. They prepared marksmanship to serve wherever and whenever they were called to serve. In World War I, the American marksmen proved their superiority in places like Cantigny, Chateau Thierry, and Bellewood. After World War I, the U.S. military dwindled to a relatively small force. From that time, all through the Great Depression, civilian marksmanship throughout the country are the ones who maintain marksmanship skills. In Illinois, it was maintained by the Illinois State Rifle Association. Other states had similar organizations. Many thought that with the war ending and the League of Nations in place, the days of military and trained marksmen were over. In 1937, the civilian marksmanship programs were nearly disbanded. In 1938, Adolf Hitler was on the rise. Benito Mussolini had formed a fascist dictatorship, and Japan had invaded Manchuria. Marksmanship suddenly became a good idea again. The Illinois State Rifle Association conducted pre-induction marksmanship training at military bases throughout Illinois. When World War II broke out, 300,000 marksmen and marksmanship instructors had been trained. The ISRA had done much of the training with the Illinois National Guard. The Illinois National Guard was called up and sent along with other units from Indiana and Ohio to the Philippines. It was these soldiers who held off the Japanese for 4 months at Corregidor and Bataan. Their marksmanship, resolve, and sacrifice stopped the Japanese advance long enough to give the United States and Australia time to prepare. After World War II, civilians and organizations such as the ISRA kept marksmanship skills alive. After every war, the ISRA and its marksmen are still there, still trained, still preparing, keeping America ready. Beginning in the 1950s, a pacifist movement was noted in the United States. As part of this movement, people began looking at firearms as only tools of destruction, not as tools of self-defense. In Illinois, this movement manifested itself in the city of Chicago. Those governing the city began passing more and more laws restricting private ownership of firearms. If the ISRA was to continue its mission of training civilians, it would have to expand its role and begin lobbying state and local governments and defending the rights of law-abiding citizens to own and use firearms. By the year 1960, the Illinois State Rifle Association had a constant presence in Springfield, but nothing could compare it for the events of 1967. In 1967, Chicago Mayor Richard J. Daley proposed a scheme to register every firearm in the state of Illinois. This was a direct attack on individual firearm ownership in Illinois. The Illinois State Rifle Association, the Illinois Wildlife Federation, and other sportsmen's clubs began fighting against this draconian plan. But the city of Chicago was too powerful and the attack on individual rights came too quick to overcome. Left with no alternative, the ISRA brokered a plan that would register firearm owners rather than individual firearms. It is now known as the Firearm Owners Identification Card, the FOID Act. In 1968, gun owners throughout the nation were attacked by the Gun Control Act of 1968. Gun owners nationally were unprepared for such an attack on firearm owners' rights. Late in the 1980s, an ISRA vice president was among the first of those to discover that U.S. Senator Thomas Dodd had secretly had the Nazi Gun Control Acts of 1935 and 1938 translated by the Library of Congress and incorporated those provisions into the Gun Control Act of 1968. Never again would gun owners trust their government. Those events would forever shape the modern Illinois State Rifle Association. Although born in the early 20th century, the ISRA is an ever-evolving 21st century organization. Headquartered in a 6,500 square foot office facility in Chatsworth, Illinois, the ISRA has won the Association of the Year award from the National Rifle Association 3 times, and the Second Amendment Foundation has awarded the ISRA Affiliate of the Year 4 times. The ISRA has a robust political agenda. The ISRA Legislative Committee now employs 4 lobbyists in Springfield who deal with dozens of firearm-related issues every year. In 1997, the ISRA parented the Illinois State Rifle Association Political Victory Fund, the ISRA PVF. The ISRA PVF reviews and endorses and supports pro-gun candidates from the state constitutional officers to local elected officials. In 2009, the Illinois State Rifle Association Federal Political Action Committee, ISRA FedPAC, was formed to review and endorse and support federal candidates regarding Second Amendment issues. Recently, the ISRA has entered the area of litigation in its effort to secure Second Amendment rights for all law-abiding citizens in Illinois. The ISRA Attorney Referral System is chaired by Victor Quilisi and is now a full committee of the Illinois State Rifle Association. The purpose of this committee is to provide experienced attorneys in the field of firearm law to law-abiding citizens regarding firearms and FOID issues. Presently, the committee comprises 50 cooperating attorneys and 2 law firms. The committee has been involved in providing amicus briefs to the Illinois Supreme Court. In the area of national litigation, the ISRA has assisted in providing amicus briefs in Heller v. D.C., a landmark firearms case. The Illinois State Rifle Association was a plaintiff in the Second Amendment Foundation case in the historic McDonald v. City of Chicago that struck down the Chicago handgun ban. You will hear more from the ISRA in the area of litigation. The Illinois State Rifle Association Legal Assistance Committee is a not-for-profit 501c3 organization to provide funding for cases that will significantly affect firearm issues. The ISRA has not forgotten its roots in education and training. Its original mission was to educate and train people in small arms marksmanship prior to and during military service, a role which the ISRA still fulfills today. Many ISRA trainees are now serving in the military. The ISRA trains and allows the use of its range facility to any military or law enforcement unit seeking firearms training in Illinois. Training civilians in marksmanship has become a large undertaking for the ISRA. It trains between 30 and 35,000 people each year in some type of firearm or firearm safety training. For 2011, the ISRA has planned over 180 events that will involve some type of education and training. It hosts the largest single one-day range training event in the United States. In 2009, 1,968 people attended, and in 2010, there were 1,565 people who went through safety classes and had an opportunity to fire under instruction rifles, pistols, and shotguns. The ISRA has produced national and international shooting championships and teams. Today, the Illinois State Rifle Association is a dynamic organization working in all areas of the shooting disciplines and in the political arena. We look forward to working with you.